I only found out about the wedding through a post. A blurred photo in someone else's story, half-cropped. A lace train trailing down the garden steps. The bodice, unmistakable. It was mine. The dress wasn't expensive. Not in money, anyway. It was sewn by my grandmother's hands. Slow, delicate, thread pulled taut with care. She used to hum as she stitched. Every bride, she said once, should feel stitched into their story. I was 15 when she measured my shoulders, and smiled like she saw a future. I never wore it. Not for prom, not for the courthouse wedding I canceled. It stayed preserved in the cedar chest in our attic, sealed in white tissue, zipped in plastic. Until it didn't. No one asked. No one called. I stared at that photo for 5 minutes before my breath caught up with me. I tilted the phone, zoomed, and there she was, my sister. Laughing, veil tangled in the breeze, wearing my story like it was hers. That same night, Mom texted me a recipe. No explanation. No, how have you been? Just a picture of roasted potatoes, a thumbs-up emoji. I didn't reply. I didn't ask about the wedding, or the dress, or why I was never sent an invitation. I went upstairs and opened the attic. The cedar chest was there, lid slightly cracked. The tissue paper inside was torn, brittle at the edges. One satin button lay loose at the bottom, like a lie that didn't quite hold. And in the corner, an empty hanger. Not even mine. Years ago, I said she could borrow anything of mine. She'd steal my sweaters and makeup and friends. She'd say, "It's just for tonight." And I'd say, "It's okay." Because that's what I was taught. Good sisters, give. Quiet daughters don't make a fuss. But there's something uniquely cruel about being erased so gently, like dust wiped from a shelf. The next morning I went to the market like nothing happened. Bought groceries. Took the long route home. Passed by the flower shop where we used to pick out roses for Mother's Day. Saw the same old woman sweeping petals from the curb. She looked up at me like she knew. Like she'd seen this kind of ache before. I got home and boiled pasta I didn't feel like eating. My phone pinged again. A group message. "Hope everyone had a blast yesterday." Followed by confetti. Emojis and group selfies. I wasn't in them. But the dress was. That night, I took the last photo I had of the dress. The one Grandma took, where I stood barefoot on the porch, and she said, "You look like you belong in a storybook." I stared at it until my screen dimmed. Then I slid it into a folder marked unsent. The next week was all wedding leftovers. Digital crumbs of celebration kept appearing, cascading through feeds I forgot I followed. My cousin posted a reel. Champagne bubbles, glitter heels on wet grass, a caption that read, "Best day ever. Family forever family." That word always stuck in my throat like dry bread. I didn't unlike it, didn't block anyone. I just muted the thread, folded the silence between us like another layer of linen no one would notice missing. Mom didn't mention the wedding. Not once. But 2 days after, she asked if I could swing by and help organize the pantry. She said it casually, like she hadn't been part of the theft. Like I hadn't watched my sister walk down the aisle wrapped in the last thing I thought was still mine. I said I was busy. She replied with a thumbs up. That's how we communicate now, through gestures that feel more like auto-replies than love. I used to think I was imagining the imbalance, that it was in my head when I wasn't invited to the planning brunches, or when I found out from a cousin that they chose my sister's wedding venue without ever asking if I wanted to go, or when they said, well, it'd be too awkward if both of you were there, considering your history with Josh, my ex-fiancé, now her husband. They called it complicated. I called it betrayal with soft lighting. The thing is, I forgave her, or at least I thought I did. I moved out, changed my number for a while, even sent her a message once after their engagement. I hope you're happy, just please don't use the dress. She left it on seen. Never replied. I should have known then. But hope is a stubborn thing. It clings like static to everything you fold away. That Saturday, I sat at the foot of my bed, knees pulled to my chest, holding the torn tissue paper like a funeral offering. I stared at it for so long, I could almost smell Grandma's perfume in the fibers. Lavender, lemon balm, and something warm, like tea left to steep too long. I thought about her hands, the way they moved when she sewed. Steady, sure, humming that same lullaby. She would have noticed. She always noticed when I was quiet. I opened the folder marked unsent, scrolled through the photos. Me, 15. Me laughing with pins still in the seams. Grandma's fingers brushing my collarbone, adjusting the neckline. Then I found the last one. The hanger. Empty. Bare. And beneath it, the only caption I ever drafted. Some things you only get to wear once, and some people never let you. Didn't send it. But I saved it again. The first time I saw the dress again was by accident. A week after the wedding, I stopped by Dad's house to drop off a box of books he lent me years ago. He hadn't asked for them, but something in me needed to return them, like a ledger closed. No one was home. I had the spare key, the same one they'd forgotten I still had. The air inside smelled faintly of aftershave and old wood. Dust hung in the corners like tired secrets. I left the box on the entryway bench, but as I turned to leave, something pulled at me. That old instinct, to check. To confirm what I already knew but couldn't let sit untouched. So I walked to the hall closet. They never opened this one much. It was where we kept things that didn't belong. The outgrown winter coats, guest linens, half-packed memories. And hanging crooked, still zipped in a dry cleaner's bag, was the dress. My dress. Now creased, the hem slightly muddy. A faint wine stain near the waist. And a lipstick smudge. Not my shade. I didn't touch it. Didn't even breathe near it. Just stared at the way it drooped from the hanger like it knew. Like it was ashamed of itself. I closed the door softly. Didn't slam it. Didn't cry. On the way out, I passed the dining room. The table was set with new placemats. 5 chairs. Not 6. Mine was gone. Replaced with a small ficus in a ceramic pot. And I realized they had made space for everything else. But not me. I didn't speak to anyone for the rest of the day. I made soup I didn't eat, sat on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinets, letting the steam fog the window. Somewhere in the house, my phone buzzed, then buzzed again. I let it. Later, I checked. It was from my sister. Heard you stopped by. You could have knocked. BTW if you want the dress back. It's in the closet. We're done with it. Done with it. As if it were a prop. As if It hadn't once been a promise, a thread to the past, a gift from a woman who loved me without question. I didn't reply. But I unzipped the dry cleaner's bag in my mind and saw every careless handprint on that dress. Every time I was told to make room. Every time I obeyed. I started sleeping with the hallway light on again. Not because I was afraid, but because the dark had begun to feel too familiar, like a second skin I couldn't peel off. Every night, I lay in bed watching the amber glow bleed under my door, remembering how Grandma would leave the hall lamp lit too, not because I needed it, because she said, "Some people just rest easier knowing the world still flickers a little." Lately, it feels like my world stopped flickering, like someone pulled the plug on the version of me that used to believe in warmth. 2 weeks passed. No more texts from my sister, just a tagged photo of her on some beach, barefoot, bronzed, smiling. Caption, "Married life starts now." I stared at it for longer than I meant to. I studied the ring, the dress, the man beside. Her. The man who once promised me spring weddings and quiet mornings with shared coffee. I used to think closure looked like forgiveness. Now I think it looks more like distance. Mom called 3 days later. Said she had some of my things in a box if I wanted them. Her voice was clipped, half formal, like she was calling a client who hadn't shown up for their appointment. I almost said, "Which things?" "The childhood ones you never protected." But I just said, "Okay," because that's how we were taught. Don't stir the pot. Don't speak out of turn. Don't make this harder than it already is. I went the next morning. She didn't invite me in. Just handed me a box from the porch, then folded her arms like she was guarding the doorway. She said, "It's been a crazy few weeks." I nodded. She said, "It wasn't personal." I looked down at the box. She said, "You could have said something if you wanted to be there." That one landed sharp. I could have said something. Like I hadn't spent years saying things. Through silence, through withdrawal, through the tiny ways I kept showing up even when they pretended not to see me. I said nothing. Because I'd said enough, and it never made a difference. At home, I opened the box. Inside were fragments. A cracked jewelry, dish I made in the 3rd grade, a scarf I forgot I owned, 3 birthday cards I wrote but never received replies to. At the bottom, a photograph, me and my sister ages ago. She was holding a popsicle, smiling. I was half out of frame, looking at her, not the camera. Even back then, I was background. That night, I didn't turn on the hallway light. I let the dark come. I needed to see if I could sit inside it without folding. A month passed. No calls, no invitations, not even a thank you note for the non-existent gift they assumed I hadn't bothered to send. I hadn't. But not because I forgot. I had one, wrapped in silver tissue, tucked beneath my bed in a box no one asked about. It wasn't store-bought. It wasn't on the registry. It was a copy of Grandma's recipe journal. The one she kept in the kitchen drawer. Creased pages stained with oil and cocoa, her handwriting looping gently in blue ink. When my sister got engaged, I spent a weekend scanning each page, restoring the edges, binding it into something she could hold. I even added a note in the front. Some heirlooms don't hang in closets. Some are passed through flavor and scent. May your home always be full. I wrapped it before they announced the dress, before I was erased. I thought about burning it, then thought about keeping it. But in the end, I slid it onto the top shelf. of my closet, next to the shoes I wore to a wedding I didn't attend. Sometimes I wonder how it would have gone if I had shown up. If I'd sat in the back row in a plain dress, eyes dry, lips closed. If they would have seen me, or worse, looked right through me. Grief isn't always loud. Sometimes it just stands outside a reception hall listening to music through the walls, pretending it doesn't know the lyrics. Last night, I dreamt of Grandma. She was baking apricot jam thumbprint cookies, like she used to make when one of us cried over something small and unspeakable. In the dream, she pressed dough into shape, looked up at me, and said, "You know, not everything sown with love ends up in the right hands." I woke with that line still resting on my tongue. Didn't speak it aloud. Didn't need to. Some truths are heavier when you say them twice. This morning I took down the box again, opened it, ran my fingers across the cloth binding. Then I wrote a new note and slipped it inside. For someone who remembers where it came from. I resealed the box, put it in the hallway closet, not out of bitterness, but because even love deserves boundaries. It happened on a Wednesday. One of those midweek afternoons where the light spills too gently across the floor, making everything feel like a memory before it even ends. I was at the bookstore. The one near the corner with dusty skylights and chipped tables in the cafe. I go there when I want to remember who I used to be. The girl who dreamt of writing poems no one would read and loved soft places where no one talked over her. I had just opened a secondhand novel when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something in me answered anyway. "Hey." Silence. Then a breath. It's Mom. My stomach tightened. Not because I missed her, but because I knew this call wasn't a repair. It was a reach. A flicker of need disguised as grace. "Your sister's having a hard time. I was wondering if you could stop by and help out with the baby shower next month." I stared at the phone like it had asked me for my spine. She didn't say, "How are you?" She didn't say, "I'm sorry." She just assumed, like always, that I'd be the reliable one, the quiet helper, the ghost who haunts behind the scenes. I said, "I can't," and let the silence do the rest. After we hung up, I sat there a while, watching the light shift across the cafe wall. It cast a long shadow across the hardwood, just wide enough to remind me how often I've lived in the in-between. I thought of all the showers, birthdays, holidays I helped set up. Always early, always cleaning, always folding someone else's joy like it was mine, but not this time, not again. That night I pulled a notebook from my drawer. The one with the floral cover, edges frayed from years of nearly writing. I opened to a blank page and wrote, "The dress still hangs, but I no longer wait for them to remember who it belonged to. I think there's a kind of power in refusing the roles you've been quietly cast in, the loyal daughter, the helpful sister, the placeholder. Sometimes walking away isn't loud. It's just closing a door that was never fully open to begin with." It rained the day I made the decision. Not in a cinematic, stormy way. Just a slow, persistent drizzle that made everything smell like wet concrete and memory. I had driven across town to pay the bill on the storage unit. It was the one I rented when I first moved out, half full of things they said I'd probably want later. I hadn't visited it in over a year. But something made me go back. The air inside was stale. Dust settled on the plastic tubs like a hush. I opened one marked, "Wedding," and there it was. The dried bouquet, the canceled venue folder, the reception playlist I never got to use. All still packed, waiting, like part of me hadn't realized it was over. And beneath it all, tucked into a manila envelope, was the original guest list. My guest list. The one I wrote before Josh shifted eyes across dinner tables. I scanned the names. Mom, Dad, my sister, all highlighted in green. Confirmed. Back when I still believed they wanted to show up for me. I stared at it, then took out a pen, and one by one, I crossed them off. It didn't feel like anger. It felt like uninviting ghosts. That night, I pulled out the RSVP card I had found in the box Mom gave me. It was blank, probably slipped in by mistake. I filled it out, checked the box next to not attending. Then, in the margin, I wrote in small, tidy handwriting, "But thank you for confirming where I stand." I left it on my windowsill, watched the rain slide down the glass behind it. The next morning, I packed up everything from the storage unit I no longer needed. The playlist, the bouquets, the dreams I outgrew. I didn't burn them, didn't smash them in some fit of cinematic rage. I just threw them away, quietly, like expired food. Things meant for a version of me they never truly met. It's been 5 months. The dress is still hanging in their closet, I think. Though I've stopped wondering. Stopped checking tags. Stopped tracing the old seams in my head, hoping they might lead me back to the version of me who once imagined walking down an aisle in it. Closure didn't arrive like a grand moment. No apology. No sudden reckoning. Just a slow loosening of something tight in my chest. A soft knowing that I don't belong where I'm only ever tolerated. They had the baby shower without me. Mom texted photos like postcards from another country. In one of them, my sister held up a gift bag with tissue paper spilling out. Everyone around her was laughing. No one noticed the empty chair in the corner. I zoomed in on that chair for longer than I meant to. It was mine. Folded. Unused, and, for the first time, it didn't hurt. Last weekend, I went back to Grandma's house. It's quiet now. The curtains drawn. The garden wild in a way she never would have allowed. But inside, it still smells like lemon balm and lavender. The good kind of memory. I sat at the kitchen table, opened my notebook, and wrote. The dress was never the wound. It was just where I kept it. I didn't cry. I made tea. Before I left, I opened the back closet. The same place she used to keep winter blankets and forgotten gifts. I took down a folded quilt, the one with the hand-stitched initials. Mine were in the corner, barely visible. But there. I wrapped it around myself, stood in the middle of the room, and let the silence say it for me. I don't need to be claimed by people who never held me fully. I don't need to wear the pain to prove it happened. I am not what they borrowed and forgot to return. On the way home, I passed by the bridal shop downtown. The mannequins in the window wore gowns I never wanted. I paused just long enough to watch one of them turn slowly on its display pedestal. Laced, faceless, perfectly still. I smiled. Not bitterly. Just peacefully. Because I no longer needed the dress to tell my story. I had stitched something better. A life that fits. Quiet. Untouched. Finally mine.